ladies and gentlemen. This is Roy Potter, and I'm in the most desolate place I can find without driving too many more miles. And I think this fits the environment that I am trying to convey, the message that I am trying to convey. There's no life here. You may hear some background noise. There are some people a few hundred yards away and some traffic. But I think you get the point here. This is desolation. This is without life. This is without root or branch. I'm going to walk into the picture here now. Why did I decide to do this? Well, as I mentioned, I wanted to do something spiritual today, and I wanted to show some scenery. You probably didn't think I meant this type. But why this? Because, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we're headed. Despite all the hope, all the propaganda, all the political promises, no matter who they're coming from, the Democrats, the Republicans, the socialists, and the communists, or the capitalists, we're all missing the point. You don't like me talking about Alex Jones, but I heard him say it just the other day. He said, if we don't have a change in spiritual direction in the people, this is all going down. And this will be the result. I know Christians and Jews and others say that the Bible is infallible and that the promises are that God will overcome all of the problems that we cause for ourselves and prevent us from ending up in a place like this, which is desolation. For some of you, you would say it's a loss of consciousness, a loss of individuality, hell. Some of you would say, well, you burn in hell forever. Well, that's your conscience being seared, but I'm not here to talk that kind of doctrine. I'm here to make a point. Yes, I've been calling Trump out, trying to convince him. I'm a small voice, but like many others, to do the right thing. And yes, to defeat the banksters and even the Chinese and the New World Order, the Privy Council of the Queen, all of those things. Yes, an economic war is a great way to do it. And I hope it works. But, as I've said from the day that I first heard Donald Trump talk, if he concentrates only on the economics of this war that we're in, and ignores the change in the heart that is necessary in the people, including himself, at least a large number of people, that change of heart that will open up their eyes and unstop their ears. As I've often said, everybody wants to be right, but few of us want to get right. It's like a person who's overweight. They might want to be thin, right? And in their mind they can say, I am right, this is the way it's supposed to be. Or they can look at themselves critically and say, I got to work on this to get myself right. It's kind of very similar to that. And I know in the political atmosphere of today, the political correctness, we're supposed to accept everybody's body style and all that. But there are indications of laziness, of an unwillingness to not eat too much food, things like that, which are all bad for you, you know. Enough to make it, you know. Give us this day our daily bread, and not give us this day a year's worth of bread. There's a principle involved there, and that is that if we get enough for today, we should be grateful. If we can store more, which we should, of course, to plan for bad times, that's right. But the point is that we shouldn't become gluttonous. We shouldn't become so materialistic that our only idea of getting is to get material goods and forget about wisdom, understanding, faith, love, charity, etc. I'm standing out here trying to convey being alone and separate in a horrible place. I don't want anybody to end up in a situation like this, with the exception, of course, because I don't have the mind and heart of God, but those who harm others deliberately, like the New World Order does, like pedophiles do, like murderers do, like thieves do. God is more patient than I am. So what do? Well, we have to work on ourselves. That's the most important thing. I've often heard it said, make the change in you that you want to make in the world. It might not change the world, but it might change the way you operate in it. And while our salvation is still dependent upon God's charity, He still expects us to do the best we can. Now, I've often talked about a great division that's happening. And this great division is between good and evil. There is no reconciliation. There cannot be. It's impossible. And if it were possible, it would be wrong. We cannot expect the evil side, and that's what they are. When you call for the death of babies, endless wars, stealing from others by the force of government to give to somebody else, prohibiting speech, prohibiting the right to self-defense, taking property without due process, having secret societies who are hell-bent on taking power. Never mind right or wrong, it's Machiavellian, you know. The ends justifies the means. Or does it really? In their minds it does. But it shouldn't in ours. The economic war that Trump is doing to try to give us an advantage against the New World Order, against the banking system, against the crown, the British crown, which has been a problem for us for over 200 years. The Chinese, that the New World Order saw as the example of the new society, the new government, and imposed that upon everybody, all the surveillance and all this. And it's all right here, ladies and gentlemen. It's already here. Just not all of it has been kicked into play. And Trump's efforts to try to defeat them economically so that they'll back off is great. But, as you've heard me say before, when he showed the LGBTQ flag, now again, I'm not going to be politically correct here, all right? I think that lifestyle has many problems. I'm not going to say, well, I will say it's sinful, but in such a way that it doesn't give increase. It has to borrow from others, take from others to get increase. For instance, a lesbian couple one of them has to get pregnant by a man or by artificial insemination, or they have to adopt a child. It's not really binding that relationship that was intended from the beginning. Actually, there are no prohibitions against lesbianism in the Bible, frankly. And I think God understands why better than I do, and I'm not going to get into the reasons here. I think I know some of them. But it does prohibit men lying with men as a man would lie with a woman. That is not just confusion, that's abomination, and it leads to desolation. And you might say, well, they have a right to do it. Yeah, okay, fine. But to promote it into society like President Trump did was a big mistake. And then he goes, of course, and you heard me say this, when he was telling other governments that they need to, legalize homosexuality or at least decriminalize it, whatever. As I said, that's a slippery slope, and it leads to other things. Not saying that heterosexuals can't do terrible things either, but it's all that same spirit, and we see it in pedophilia and child sacrifice, the abortions, now the killing of children after they're born, keeping them alive to take their organs, doing what the Chinese did to the Falun Gong and probably to the Muslims in those concentration camps up north in China. And that's the plan for the Christians too, ladies and gentlemen. And the Christians always think they need to turn the other cheek. Acceptance. What's the rule here? First you reject, then you tolerate, then you accept, then you join in. And you're seeing that joining in your posterity. Your children are being taught to accept these things. Look at the drag queen deals in the schools and the libraries. Look at the gay pride parades. Look at the television. Look at, we're no longer going to have two genders, we're going to have multiple, hundreds sometimes. An actual, they're defying the truth. A man is wise in his own eyes. Everybody wants to be right, few want to get right. These are not our only problems, but they're indicative of our evil. And this nation is evil. It has not repented. It hasn't. So Trump got up there and he waved that LGBTQ flag, did this thing on saying that homosexuality, nations of the world should stop. And there are other nations that are actually more righteous in this regard than we are. I'm not saying that harassing, persecuting, killing homosexuals is the right thing to do, but you certainly can't promote it. Not in the way that it has been. And where are the police, the federal agents, the military, to protect the unborn and those who are born and then killed after they're born? As we've heard about in San Francisco during the Planned Parenthood trial that's been out there and that other people have admitted to. Where are our troops to go and protect the lives, the very essence of civil liberties, of personal, perfect law of liberty, their lives? Where are our government officials to protect them? They're nowhere to be found. There's talk, no action. This is indicative of a reticence to do the right thing for the right reason because you're afraid of ridicule. You're afraid of losing the next election. You're afraid of looking like you're closed-minded. And again, all of this applies to the First, Second, Fourth Amendments, etc., as well. As the redhead libertarian said, the U.S. government has tried to shift that they're responsible for protecting us. And I don't mean in the military sense. I mean from each other, just like she said. That's evolved into that. Even Trump says that I'm supposed to protect you. No. He's supposed to protect the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Because that document is not to protect us, as the redhead libertarian said, from each other, from ourselves, but from the government itself. It's supposed to protect us from them. And we've allowed mere acts of Congress to override the Constitution. Whose fault is that? Well, certainly the corrupt politicians and the lawyers have done that. There's no question about that. But ladies and gentlemen, it's time to stand up and be counted and to demand that righteousness be set on the line and plumbed so that you know the direction that you can go and not incur the wrath of nature and end up in a place like this. Our society can end up like this. Now, I came out here deliberately at sunset. You're going to see the light fading because that's what I see happening to our country. I hear all of these people extolling the virtues of President Trump and the Republicans, etc. And then I hear all these leftist Marxists extolling the principles of Marx and Lenin and Stalin and Mao and Pol Pot. They don't admit that's what they are, but that is what they're doing. The point is, everybody wants to be right. Nobody wants to get right. And the sun is setting on us. Grace is real, I believe. I've had it happen in my own life. And as mankind, I think God will pick a few out. And actually, the Hebrew Scriptures say that there'll be a small remnant. A remnant. Think about a garment, a blanket. A remnant is just a piece of it, and a very small piece of it usually. I think that's a promise. But it's also a tragedy. I was a Jehovah's Witness once, and when I was growing up, I've been through a lot of religions. My parents had a lot of responsibility for that. And I was taught that if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, if you reject the message of the witnesses, you're annihilated. You're done. You cease to exist. You cease to have consciousness. The funny thing is that at least in those days, I think they've changed I haven't looked into it lately, but I think they've changed their doctrine now. But at one time, it was only that there would be 144,000 that would be with God. It's that scripture from the book of Revelations. That's proof to me that they don't understand the last few verses of Malachi, which talks about that God will turn the hearts of the children to the fathers and the fathers to the children, lest he come and smite the earth with a curse. There's more to this than anybody, even religious leaders, will talk to you about. As I've often said, this is a microcosm of the true reality. And we're being exposed to good and evil. I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I think all this is important. People will say, well, God can't stand evil. He can't have it in his presence. Let me ask you a question, and this is an old philosophical question. Evil exists, at least our comprehension of it being evil. Is God the creator of all, or was there another creator in there that changed that? Actually, there is a scripture, and I think some of you know it. You can look it up if you do. If you don't, look it up. And that is that God says, I created good and evil. Why? Because those are dual parts of our nature, and they're both important. It's that you don't allow the evil side to take control, as we've allowed the banksters, the New World Order, the devil worshippers, Luciferians, whatever you want to call them, the child sacrificers, the people that take women, and it's usually women or children, especially young males. You all should know this. And it's rampant throughout our society, and not just at the top levels, as most of you should know by now. But that's where it's the most hideous, because those are the people that pretend to be our leaders, the ones who know, right? They're two-faced. And there are dangers in calling these things out. I kind of, I throw my hat in with Trump. You know that. I certainly wouldn't throw it in with the other side, okay? My wife, Carol, was a Democrat, but she wasn't about controlling others. She wasn't about taxation without representation. She just thought the government could solve a lot of problems that, Republicans think should be left to the individuals or to, like, churches or those types of things. I could understand her position, and we never actually fought about those things. We discussed them, but I had that insight. I looked at it. I understand it. But I would never become a Democrat. I'm not really a Republican either. I'm actually a believer in the perfect law of liberty, so I'm probably closer to a libertarian, I suppose. But not even that, because then that says that it's do as you want, which is almost Luciferian. I ran on the Libertarian ticket, by the way, when I ran for sheriff of Salt Lake County. My point in all this is, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know who's going to lead this country down the spiritual path so that we can prevent this from happening, this desolation. You can't even go to the churches and get this. The closest I've heard are street preachers. Chuck Baldwin is a good one. You know, he does a good job. Frankly, Alex Jones does a good job. And as I've often said, I know a lot of you don't like Alex because of a lot of reasons, but I look at what he tries to accomplish. And I've already told you why I criticize him, not vehemently. He said it on a program not long ago. He said, the old prophets were considered crazy because they said that the society at large was on the wrong path. And so that society, including the rulers usually, and that's where it came from, attacked those people that were trying to call them to repentance, to wake them up. Hasn't Alex suffered from that? Yes, he has. So actually he fits the prophetic profile. I'm not saying he's right in all of his predictions. I'm not going to call them prophecies. But his principles are right on. So Trump can do his war on the economy, the economic warfare that might break us free from these chains. But when he also at the same time promotes that which degrades us, which cuts off our root and branch, our natural generation, when he allows things like the definitions of men and women to be changed into multiple genders or even animals, when he allows states, like in San Francisco, California, to do the things that they've done, and I won't enumerate those, you should know what I'm talking about. Taking people's right to self-defense away. God would never do that. And make no mistake about it, we're seeing all of this right now because Trump did initiate the red flag information, did he not? I mean, those types of things have been talked about forever, but he gave the wave that it was okay. Did he not? And did he not now say that he's going to use Stalinist mental evaluations along with those red flag laws? No talk about psychotropics and the abuse of our drug industry that has caused this problem in the first place. And I won't go into the history of that. If you want to look into how marijuana became illegal, what would have happened if aspirin had been discovered today instead of over 100 years ago? These are evil things. The fruit of the earth, I'm not saying those things that are distilled out and made artificial, but the fruit of the earth was put here for a reason. So Trump pushes on the economics and not on the moral values of the people, because the moral value has become arguable, debatable. Truth changes, right? It's my truth. It's our truth. Well, if your truth stands at odds with the obvious manifestation of truth, you got a problem. As a very good friend of mine who was a Hebrew sage told me, he was having an argument with the Pope, believe it or not, about some point of doctrine. I don't recall what it was. And you know what he told him at the end? He said, well, I tell you what, I'll have my son take that argument up with your son. End of tale. End of argument, end of debate. There are the right use of things and the wrong use of things. And unfortunately, Trump, about 50% on the right side, but he ignores this moral rectitude, this moral foundation. He talks about it to some extent, but then he allows people like, I suspect, Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump to convince him otherwise, which is interesting because they're Jewish and they know what the Torah says, at least they should, but I think they're following Talmudic principles. Some of the Talmud's good, some of it's bad, and I'm not going to get into that today. But Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump do not deserve to be in the White House, and they do not deserve to have President Trump's ear. They do not. And he has picked these other people that go along, and people say, well, he's finding out who's who, and he's going to take care of this. We haven't got time for that anymore, ladies and gentlemen, if that was ever the case at all. Now you'll say, why are you picking on Trump? Gee, what about the Democrats? No, no, no. If I find these faults with Trump, by default, the Democrats have the same and worse problems, right? The Democratic Party has almost turned totally leftist. Nancy Pelosi's pulled back because she can't control it. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, that divide is going to get worse, even between her and her leftists, or she'll succumb because she's afraid of losing power, which again would be the wrong thing to do. But we're at that point where that change is occurring. And as I've said, we have to embrace it. Oh no, we've got to try to bring people together. We've got to try to get them to cooperate and work together and work out these problems. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot shake hands with a baby killer. You cannot shake hands with a rapist, murderer. You cannot shake hands with someone who promises you something that they can't fulfill. And if you find out that they can't fulfill it and then reject them, they stab you in the back with a cold steel blade or shoot you in the head as the Chinese communists did. Dump your body in a ditch. And that's what's coming here. That's who the Democrats have become. Oh, I know that there are the same type of people on the Republican side, on the supposed, all we got to do is look at Soros. All we got to do is look at people like, well, I won't name any names. I'll leave that to your perusal. So the Democrats have a problem. And I totally reject everything that they've done. Beto O'Rourke, burglary, drunk driving, hit and run. I think he had some thing to do with children, some children's pictures or something. Anyway, here's a guy who can't own a gun, and he's telling us he's going to take them from us. Do you see the hypocrisy? In other words, we can't protect ourselves from people like him. That's the whole idea of this tyranny, that they can do whatever they want to do, and we have to submit to it. And I say, no, we cannot do that any longer. We cannot go across the aisle and shake hands with these people and try to make a compromise, because there are none. Because in every situation, you will descend to their level. I guarantee it. And history has proven it. I didn't listen to the entire discussion that Tulsi Gabbard gave in Iowa. I think it was today. I saw the beginning part of it, or some part of it. And she was saying, our country is so divided right now. Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, liberals, by sex, by race, all of these different things. Most of them were superficial differences that have been antagonized and magnified by the powers that be to separate us. But ladies and gentlemen, the fact of the matter is, and I didn't listen to the whole thing, so I really don't know, but if she went forward and said that we need to overcome these differences and appreciate each other's points of view and just agree to disagree and to shake hands and to unify our country, I can tell you that that's a false premise. As much as I like Tulsi, I love her demeanor. She's definitely not like me. I'm very boisterous. Sometimes I use a lot of four-letter words. God looks at that as barking, by the way. As a dog barking, it doesn't mean anything to him. Using his name in vain is what he worries about, and if you don't know his name, you can't use it in vain, and God isn't his name. That's for another day. So Tulsi Gabbard says we need to get together. We need to cross this division and this separation and somehow reunite the country. Ladies and gentlemen, I say that that's the very last thing at this point. That time has passed. At this point, it's too late. As I said earlier in this little presentation, we cannot shake hands with baby killers, rapists, murderers, pedophiles, warmongers, thieves, liars. As a society, if we do not put evil away from us, this will be our reward. This will be our legacy. This will be our destiny. I have come not to bring peace, but a sword, to the dividing asunder, to separate the wheat from the tares, the evil from the good. I will stand upon sheer naked principle, even if I stand alone. Oh, I've made plenty of mistakes. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not perfect. But I understand the principle, and I've talked about that before. So thank you, Tulsi Gabbard, for wanting to try to unite us. But young lady, and she is compared to me, it's impossible at this point, not without compromise to evil. And if we go down that road, this will be our end result. And if we fail to kick the evil out because we're afraid of being called, we're not politically correct, or we're not liberal in our thinking, we don't accept people and all that. The Sodom and Gomorrah story in the Bible isn't just an allegory. That's what happens when you allow principles that are against the natural course of things, against the God-ordained, or if you like, the nature-ordained system. That's what happens. Increase stops. Oh, but we've got to control population. And who determines that? It's like the carbon thing. They talk about, oh, we've got too much carbon dioxide. What do plants breathe? And if plants can't get the carbon dioxide they need to thrive, what happens to our oxygen? It's a balance. And right now, the carbon dioxide, I'm not a scientist, but I've read enough of the real research that we're at a very low level for carbon dioxide. Our plants are asphyxiating, suffocating. And I won't go into all of that. The point is that everything that's presented to us by these liars who claim to be our betters, the end result is the death of billions. And the abomination that's desolation. We need to reject the evil that's being presented to us without hesitation. Call it out for what it is. Our children being given over to drag queens, our babies aborted, after birth being kept alive until it's decided whether or not their organs are worth money, and the parents would rather have that than the child. That's really what's happening. Kill them for their organs, kill them for whatever. Get a cut. A cut of the money. Or just be free of having to have a child. Look at these couples now that I understand, I don't know any, but they say they get pregnant and then they have the abortion and it's some type of a sexual fetish. Well, that's evil, ladies and gentlemen. These are methods of worshiping the ancient gods like Moloch. Okay, I think I've said my piece for the day. I just wanted to make sure that you got the message. Again, Tulsi Gabbard, I appreciate you wanting to unite the country. A house divided itself shall not stand, but that time of reconciliation is long past. It could end up in civil war, or it could just end up that the leftist Marxists actually do obtain complete power complete power, and that then a massive persecution, prosecution, and annihilation of, I'm going to say Christians, but I'm going to define that as those who have goodness in their hearts and minds, who want to do the right thing, who don't submit to these evils. That's how I'm going to define it. And they're going to be gulagged, decimated, no, worse than decimated, annihilated. Are we going to go along with this? Go along to get along? There is no more of that. Those days are past. I would that ye would have life, and that more abundantly. Not this. But if we keep going down this path, this country, this nation, this will be our end result. As I've said in the past, Russia is a more righteous nation than we are. Islam, as much as I have problems with the Islamic code, the Islamic system, I saw a tweet by Mike Cernovich that there were some things that were going on in a school, probably in Minnesota, I'm not sure where, but that it went against the Islamic principles, and I don't know what it was, I have no idea. But as a group, the entire Muslim community walked out, took their children out of school. Do you ever think Christians would do something like that? No, because we have been told that the state is our God, even though we don't admit to that. The scriptures, especially Romans 13, has been interpreted to mean that we have to submit to these national authorities in every way. If we stood up as a people and said no on everything that these evildoers do, again, I don't like Islam, I've said that before, but that example is something that we should be doing. And no, I don't believe that you can meld Islam and Christianity. No, that's not possible. Islam does not fit into the constitutional concept of government, republic, constitutional republic. It does not. It never will. It's one of those things that you can't bring together. It's impossible. Either the Muslims will have to submit to the constitutional government and just practice their religion on their own, which is what the government expects Christians to do, expected me to do, for instance, or they'll have to leave and go back to where Sharia law can be practiced as a governmental principle. But that can't happen here, and if it does, we're destroyed. This is what we will get. But I laud the Muslim people, the Islamic people who walked out because of this. Cernovich called it propaganda, but let's just say it was something contrary to their notions of right and wrong. A few of us have done that. You've seen Bundy Ranch, you've seen families, many families pull their children out of school over this drag queen business. A lot that haven't because, start them out young, get them used to it young. Right. That's destruction. So, choose you this day whom you will serve. Make that decision whether you're going to go to the right or to the left. Choose evil or good, and you better use your discernment and your spiritual eyes, mind, and heart. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Oh, and better not. Out here for now.